Hey guys, so I got a ton of grapes from my neighbor. They are organic. She lives down the street and called me the other day and asked if I wanted to come harvest some grapes this year. They are elderly, so they don't use a whole lot of their grapes, and they have about 3 vines. And I think I got about maybe 20 pounds of grapes that I just picked this morning. So I need to get the grapes off of most of these vines. That's what I'm doing in this bowl. I don't think I'm gonna get it all done this morning. This has been taking me a while so far. And then I'm gonna freeze them. The individual ones, I'm gonna freeze a few of them. I'm going to keep some for fresh eating. They won't last that long in the fridge though, maybe about a week, 2 if I'm very, very lucky. And then I'm gonna try and make a grape pie out of a few as well. So this morning I was sitting here endlessly plucking grapes off and putting them in this bowl. And I was like, I should just answer the questions that I asked on the community tab a couple days ago. So this is going to be a Q&A answering video whilst I pluck grapes. Now I did like and view all of the questions that y'all sent me when you sent them, but I have not reviewed them since then, and I just opened my phone. So this is going to be very just spur of the moment. I haven't thought of answers or anything, and I'm gonna do my best to answer them as thoroughly as possible, and we'll go from there. I'm sorry for the view. You're on the table, and if I set you on something other than my camera stand, you're too low. That might change though. I might change that in a bit. Should I change that now? Maybe I should change that now. Because I don't want to look up. It hurts my neck. Plus, I'm looking down most of the time at these grapes. Let's do that. Okay. I think that's better. It's better for me to be able to look at the camera anyways. But it is about 95 degrees outside. It's 9:45. It is way too hot to be doing anything. So I got most of my stuff done this morning. And I'm just going to be plucking grapes for the foreseeable future. I'm completely thankful though to get this many pounds of free grapes that are organic. I'm so happy. Okay, so first question, I'm just gonna go in order of what I have here on my screen. No particular order. But the first one from Ashley Barber 012. Can you give some examples of crops you've had success with in your climate, and let us know what you did with the excess fruits and veggies? Do you freeze them, pickle them, jar them? Also, have you thought about growing figs? So, some of my most successful crops here are going to be summer squash, cowpeas specifically, and asparagus beans specifically to beans. I haven't tried a whole lot of other varieties. As you guys know, I did do the rattlesnake pole beans this year and last year, and that was largely unsuccessful. But cowpeas are a heat-tolerant, heat-loving black-eyed pea, and they just do extremely well here. Also, the asparagus beans are a heat-loving type of Asian bean, and they do real well for me. I've grown them for the past 3 years here as well. So squash, beans. I can tell you the crops that grow well in my area. You know, I live in an agricultural community. We are New Mexico, and my area specifically is a very large exporter of pecans. And corn is grown here. Of course, chili peppers are grown here, and I have very good luck growing peppers as well. But as for corn, I have never had good luck growing corn. Although I use heirloom varieties, and I'm sure that all of the farms around here used highly hybridized GMO varieties. So I would just say beans, squash, and peppers are what I have the most luck with. And squash specifically is summer squash, because I have a real hard time with squash bugs. And I'm organic gardener, so I don't use any sort of insecticide on my squash. And the populations can get out of control. No matter how much you pluck them off, you're going to miss squash bug eggs. And if you miss a batch of eggs, you miss at least 20 babies that come out. And it's just hard to keep up with them, especially over the long term. Growing a garden organically and doing all that manual labor is exhausting because it doesn't end. You don't get to do it for a day and then take a break for a week and then come back. Like, you're out there every day, especially in the desert, watering, but looking for squash bugs, looking for eggs. And so the populations can just get out of control. And so why the summer squash is the best success for me is because I can get a harvest really quickly, and then the plants will die and I can succession sow more squash if I want to, because I have a long growing season. I have had some luck with winter squash, although a lot of my winter squash this year has been affected by squash bugs. As, yeah, the last video, no, the second to last video I made. No, the last video. Anyways, one of my tromboncinos died and the fruit was halfway through to being mature. And so I lost that fruit as a storage crop. I did end up using it in a squash soup that I made, which turned out really amazing. I think I recorded some of it. So it wasn't a complete and total loss. I did still make food out of it, but I had intended to keep those for storage over the winter. So the winter squash, not so much of a winner over here just because I don't keep up with the squash bugs. It's nearly impossible, and I'm out in my garden a lot. What do I do with excess fruits and veggies? So I started canning last year. I am not a canning expert by any stretch of the imagination. I don't even want to really teach about canning because I'm still brand new to it. I do want to get into canning more in the future, and I'm saving a majority of my tomatoes this year to be able to can for tomato sauce. Because tomato sauce is a huge staple in this household. The kids love spaghetti and all that kind of stuff. So I want to put up a lot of jars of tomato sauce. But mostly I do a lot of freezing and I do a lot of dehydrating. I also do quite a bit of fermenting. I haven't really fermented a whole variety of foods. Like, I've never fermented squash, but I have fermented cucumbers for pickles. I ferment hot peppers constantly throughout the summer because I love fermented hot sauce. In case y'all didn't know, sriracha is a fermented hot sauce. It's just amazing. I love the way it tastes. So I do ferment quite a bit, but I don't can my ferments because it obviously kills, the canning process will kill the good bacteria that's in your ferment. And then freezing, I freeze a lot. I froze a lot of my excess zucchini. I just put it in the food processor and made it into like pulp and froze that for use in like zucchini bread or something like that in the future. What else do I freeze? I mean, we have 2 large freezers for all of the meat that we raise. We do buy a cow at least once a year. We do our own meat chickens, so we have a lot of space in the freezer for that. And we do hunt deer specifically, is usually the only thing we draw for. So we have a lot of freezer space. I do love freezing foods. And then for dehydrating, it's mostly everything else, like all my herbs, especially my medicinal herbs like holy basil, mint, catnip, calendula. All of those are dehydrated. I do a lot of dehydrating of peppers as well. Red chilies, specifically red hatch chilies, if you're familiar with them, are used in their dehydrated form. They're just reconstituted and made into a red sauce. So I dehydrate a lot of peppers as well that I don't use for either fresh eating or fermenting. I don't freeze many peppers because I just wouldn't use them frozen in soups or stews or anything like that. I'd rather just dry them, dehydrate them, and then reconstitute them. I keep putting the grapes in the trash pile, and the trash in the grape pile. Alright, my phone timed out. Figs. Figs are actually grown here quite often. I have family members with fig trees. I did have a fig tree. It died. I haven't had a whole lot of luck with fruit trees. I have a really exposed, dry, sandy piece of land. The property that I'm on is just extremely exposed to the wind. I have almost no shade on it. And figs, although they are heat tolerant, require a little bit of shade in our summers here. Also, when I had my fig tree, when it was still alive, it lived through the winter, but it had to grow back from the roots come spring. We get a little bit too cold for a lot of varieties of figs. At least on my property, I can get down to 0 degrees. I'm technically zone 8A, but I've hit below 10 degrees in the winter before. And I know there are cold tolerant varieties of figs. I just haven't done a whole lot of research into them, mostly because I tend to just kill all of the fruit trees I plant. So yeah, I absolutely could go figs. I love figs. I love figs. I go to my grandpa's and pick figs off of his tree all the time. It's so in the back of my mind. Fruit trees are so far left for me with trying to expand the garden as much as possible that it just hasn't been super high on my priority list. Next, the half-assed homestead. What is your attention level to detail? Do you always keep track of what you plant? Do you get forgetful and let things slide? I love your content, by the way. Thank you. I feel like I have a high level of attention to detail. I'm very detail oriented and I like things just so. But I do forget and I do let things slide on purpose. Not necessarily just on accident, but definitely on purpose. And I'll be doing a video about this soon. But all of the squash in the front yard garden has slowly withered away, and I have just become completely uninterested in spending an hour and a half every morning watering 3 different plots on my property. I have the in-ground Three Sisters bed. I had because most of them are dead. I had the squash bed in the front yard landscaping, and then I have my full-on, that takes all of my attention, garden. And it becomes exhausting after a while. And that's okay. I fully believe that it's okay that if you just get overwhelmed, you don't have to keep performing at your peak. Right now, most of my fruit, if not all of my food, is coming out of my garden, my main garden. And the squash in the front yard had never produced me any squash anyways. They were just chugging along, putting out foliage, but not actually producing food except for the one yellow squash I had. So I didn't feel super terrible about letting it go. And I still am watering a little bit of it. I have some watermelons producing fruit in the front yard garden, so I'm still watering it a bit. I just have let that slide. At the beginning of the year, I was very detailed. I laid out all of my beds in the garden, everything that I was going to plant, and followed it for the most part. But as you know, if you've been following along, I lost half of my tags. I don't know half of the things that are planted where until they put out fruit in my garden. So, you know, I think I want to say that I start out detailed, and then as the season rolls on, I just slowly, you know, let things go and let them do what they want to do, and that's okay. I mean, you can't be 100% super vigilant all the time. I've already done that once in my previous career, and it sucks. So yeah, I would say I have a whole planner. I was keeping track of my garden production for a while, but since then I've just not. I mean, I don't want to weigh a single squash every time I bring it in from the house, so I can add up, you know, my total squash harvest for the year at the end of the season. Maybe one day I will. This year, not so much. What are 3 things you wish you could grow in your climate? From Tracy Parks. Congratulations on 1K. Thank you, Tracy. Everything. I wish I didn't have to struggle with everything in my garden. But 3 things specifically. Oh, goodness. I might have to cut this as I think about it. There's a lot that I could grow here. It requires amendments like using a shade cloth or constantly watering your garden. But in zone 8, that's a temperate but warm climate, there's a lot that you actually can grow here. Now, a couple things I can't grow are going to be the like tropical type varieties or plants that like long growing seasons and don't freeze. So one cool thing I wish I could plant would be cassava. I technically could plant it. It won't live through the winter, and I may not get much of a root harvest off of it because of that. That would be cool. I think that would be a neat crop to grow, a staple crop, such as taro as well, which is similar. Another thing that I'm not sure a whole lot of people in the US can grow, but rice. Rice would be really neat. I wish I could grow my own rice. Rice is a staple here in this house. We don't eat a whole lot of other grains besides just rice, and whew, if I could grow that, that would be amazing. But I can't grow that here. Absolutely not. Anything that requires large volumes of water or standing water is just not going to happen. And then there are a lot of cool weather crops that I can grow, but I don't get much of a harvest off of because we don't really have cool season. We just basically go from 100-degree heat, maybe drop into like the 80s for a month, and then freezing every night. Because although I live in a desert, I live in a higher altitude desert. So it's hard for me to grow long growing cool weather crops like carrots and celery that prefer, and potatoes. Potatoes are really hard for me to grow. I've gotten a little bit of a harvest these last 2 years, but it's difficult. Because they like cool weather, but they don't like freezing weather. And we don't have just cool weather here. It's either winter or summer with maybe a month in between. And a month is certainly not long enough to grow all 3 of those. So it's not necessarily that I can't grow a whole lot of things I don't want here. I just can't grow them very well. And at the end of the day, so I'm putting the grapes in that pile again. At the end of the day, it's not really worth the space in my garden to try. Now, I have successfully grown little tiny carrots, but it just gets too hot in the spring. I'm going to plant some this fall and see how that goes because I've never done fall carrots. But that's going to be dependent on how hot our monsoon season is. Because sometimes, like last year it was great. It started raining in August and it just like knocked the temperature down for 2 straight months, and it was amazing. But we very well, you know, may get one rain here that's a downpour, and then straight back to 100 degrees, and then another rain that's a downpour in 2 weeks. And just because we get rain doesn't mean there's necessarily going to be a break in the heat. So yeah, I would say like those major tropical plants, cassava, taro, that won't survive a freeze. I can't grow those here. That would be very lovely. Cool weather crops that need long periods of cool weather, like potatoes, and rice. Rice would be so cool. That would be sick. All right, who's up next? If I butcher this, I'm sorry. Okay. Moranina meat soup. We're gonna go with that. How long have you been gardening and what got you interested in it? Ooh, well, on my own, homesteading. I've been at this property gardening for, I bought the house in 2020, so 3 years. I was raised on a farm. I grew up with horses and chickens and dogs and cats and all that good stuff. And my mom was an avid gardener. I wasn't really into it as a kid. I went into animal science when I went to college, and then went into law enforcement, which has nothing to do with either of those. But I've always been a very independent person, and I've always been pretty healthy. I've always been into working out, eating healthy. I was vegan for a short stint in college. For like 2 years I was vegan. I was raw vegan at one point. I had a boyfriend about a decade back who got me into hunting, and I've always loved animals. I've always believed in animal conservation, and I believe that hunting is a form of conservation, but we won't get into that. And I don't know, I don't remember like a sudden like snap change in my head where I was like, oh, I have to grow my own food. But it was more like this gradual realization that it absolutely is possible to eat well and live healthy and be independent of, you know, relying on someone else to provide your food or your needs or anything like that. I started watching a bunch of YouTube channels and realized that, you know, I didn't have to be a 20th generation farmer with 1,000 acres to do this. And then once I was able to buy my own property, or even start looking for my own property, I specifically started looking for a place where I could do just this. Have enough space to grow my own food, and one day maybe just be able to completely go off grid. But yeah, I know that's a terrible answer. I just don't have some sort of quick experience that, you know, switched my mind over into homesteading or gardening. It was just sort of gradual. And I've always loved plants and animals. That was an easy transition for me. Have you thought about getting a greenhouse to use during winter? I actually have thought about it. I've even gone as far as to speak with my local extension office, NRCS, if you guys have ever heard of that. It's the National Resource Conservation Service, something like that. I'll put it on the screen. About getting a high tunnel grant. And it's a long process and it's complicated, but I was really interested in going forward with it. And then I got in contact with some other people, some other farmers in my area, in my exact county, who have received that NRCS grant for a high tunnel. And I asked them, like, has it been successful? Have you enjoyed it? And mostly the answers I got were no. If you've been with my channel long, you know how windy it gets here in the spring. Spring is our windiest season and driest season. Just like a 1-2 punch for your plants. But it's very, very windy, where 70-mile-per-hour gust days or sustained winds are normal. There was one farmer I spoke to where his high tunnel blew over, or the plastic just ripped off, 2 years in a row. And the other I spoke to said that it just gets too hot too quickly to be of any use in the spring, which makes sense. It does get too hot very, very, very quickly. Like I said, we have no cool periods. It just goes from cold to hot. And then in the winter time, it's far too cold to use the high tunnel or the greenhouse. Now, it could be used as a season extension, where if I had like potted tomato plants or peppers or whatever, I could toss them into a greenhouse for maybe a couple weeks to a month and continue to get a harvest on those for a little while. But we get freezing every night in the wintertime, and freezing, like 20 degrees or less. So no matter what facility you have, unless you put a heater in that greenhouse, which seems like just a waste of electricity for me, then it's going to be useless in the wintertime as well. That might change, you know. I do kind of want to turn the shed outside into, like the little barn we have, into like a half greenhouse, half shed type deal. I've seen it. Looks pretty cool. And that would be mostly for starting seeds, because I waste a lot of money on electric bills powering my lights in the wintertime when I'm starting seeds. But that's not here yet. We don't have the funds for that yet, or the brain capacity to be thinking about the plans for it. So maybe one day, but I have looked into a high tunnel, and from the general consensus of the farmers around me, it's pretty much not worth it to do. Okay. I'm sorry, I don't even know your name and you comment all the time. LGGW6XW says, I tried to grow dill for the second year in a row and it just bolts. I also tasted some before it bolted and it just didn't taste good. So I was wondering if your indoor hydroponic system produced good tasting and successful herbs. Is it a better way to have success growing herbs in our desert environment? So a couple things about the hydroponic system. Did I grow dill? I think I tried to grow dill in there. I don't remember. With dill in that specific hydroponic system that I have, it would get too large for like, it's called bouquet dill, where they'll put out their greens and they send up these big bouquets and you save the dill seeds. They do have a fern leaf dill, which is mostly just the foliage sprigs, and they tend to be shorter. And so that would be a good choice for a hydroponic system, like a tower, because the tower hold, like what you stick the plant roots in, they're not very deep. So if you have a very tall or heavy plant, it will just fall right out of the tower as it grows. As for success growing herbs in our desert environment, yeah, I do recommend it. It's obviously much more controlled. It's going to be much cooler in your house. I do grow catnip, mint successfully. I grew parsley in a garden bed last winter and it produced. You just have to have really cold, hardy herbs if you're going to be growing that outside over the winter. But for the hydroponics tower, for herbs, I think that's a fantastic idea year round. The only caveat is that it is expensive. I think my electric bill went up by over $100, last winter. Because it's constantly running the lights and a pump. And pumps are a great big draw on your electric system. So if you want to and can afford doing that year round, go for it. I'm definitely going to use it again this winter. I recently just got solar, so I'm hoping that alleviates some of the bills I had last winter. But as for using it year round, I don't think so. It's about like adding another plot of land to my property. It's just something else to maintain when I need to be focusing all of my attention on the main part of my garden, growing food. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. It is hard, to grow. And I know you live near me, LG, or in the same generalized area that I do, the same climate. It's possible to grow them over winter. If you want to start your herb seeds like midsummer, like July or August, and then transplant them out during the monsoon, you can probably get a good couple months of harvest before it freezes. And then if you're growing cold tolerant herbs like parsley or oregano, they may last a little while after our last frost date. I'm not sure. I don't love oregano, I don't grow it, and I don't use a lot of parsley, but the indoor hydroponic system was extremely successful for me with herbs last year, as well as lettuces. And I'll link that video somewhere, either down below or up above. And I recommend it. Just be aware, it shot up my electric bill. Debbie Lynn asks, have you always lived in New Mexico? Do you plan on staying there or moving to a cooler area? Cooler as in northern or cooler as in southern, but not as southern as New Mexico desert. I have not always lived in New Mexico. I lived in far west Texas for a while. I grew up there and then moved to New Mexico when I went to college, but it's the same area. I mean, my mom lives where I grew up and she lives about an hour away. So technically, yes, I've always lived here in this climate, in this particular area, in the same desert. I do not love it. I plan to move, Chase and I plan to move as soon as possible to a greener location. Ideally, it would be moving east, and I would like to stay within the same growing zone. So either zone 7 or zone 8. I like the plants I get here. It's easy. My sister lives in the middle of Texas. Not sure I want to move that far south. But I definitely want to move eastward. I just want to be out of the desert, honestly. I know that moving east, because Chase is from Missouri, I'm familiar with the area. They have the Ozarks. No offense to anyone living in the Ozarks, but it is nothing like the mountains we have here. The mountains we have here are beautiful, and moving, I know I will definitely lose some of that mountain beauty, but I'm okay with it if it rains. I just want to be able to like drive down the road and see green grass as a norm. That's not a norm here. You see cacti and things and creosote bush. No, I would love to move somewhere greener and eastward. Not sure where. That's probably a couple years in the future. Of course, Chase still has the kids here, and he's got a job with retirement. So unless that changes, we are here for the foreseeable future. But if the opportunity arose to just bounce tomorrow, I would do it. I would sell this house with a brand new solar we got, and we'd find somewhere with 10 acres. Another big thing is I want to raise cattle. Beef is a big part of our diet, and it's basically impossible to raise beef here without supplemental feeding because we just don't have the rain to grow the grass. So yeah, would love to. Don't know where, but one day it will happen. One day. Veer Singh 3688 says, I'm happy that you have 1,000 subscribers. How educated are you? I like your behavior very much and very dear. Congratulations. Thank you. I have a bachelor's degree in animal science with a minor in equine science. I was also a certified law enforcement officer for the state of New Mexico, so I have that education plus tons of other trainings. I am a firearms instructor. Many other instructorships I have related to my last career. But yeah, just the bachelor's degree in animal science, which I don't use, but I have it nonetheless. But thank you for your comment. And I had one other comment from Ronald, I believe, but it wasn't on my community post. Oh yeah, okay. So Ronald Short 9819 says, are you going to do some hunting vlogs with Chase and maybe some more recipes? I'm in zone 90, but I'm picking up similar growing tricks from you, thanks. Also like your garden tours when you just riff with your thoughts and ideas. Thanks, Ronald. You're an awesome commenter too. I think so. So both Chase and I drew for mule deer this year in New Mexico. And we've drawn every year. I've just never taken my camera with me. Honestly, it's a lot to carry a hunting pack, a rifle, and a camera. But we do have a GoPro, and I just need to get one of those little harnesses so I can just wear it. That would be ideal. I do plan on doing that before I hunt, but that isn't until November. But here in New Mexico, we're on a draw system. We can't just purchase over-the-counter tags, so it's not like I can just take you on several hunting vlogs, because we only have one hunt each, and we'll go at the same time. So there's only one deer hunt you'll be seeing this year, unfortunately. That's the way that New Mexico works. Maybe some more recipes. I do plan on being in the kitchen a little bit more with you guys. It's a little difficult for me. My kitchen is poorly laid out for video making. It's just a giant square. It's pretty small. There's not a lot of open space or light unless I turn on the lights in the kitchen. So I don't do a whole lot of kitchen, but you guys have been asking recently about preserving and recipes that I do with all the food that I'm getting in. So I will plan on doing that. And I'm getting a new camera because I hit 1,000 subscribers. That was my gift to myself. I've already ordered it. It's in the mail. It should be here today. So with that camera, I can get a wide angle lens, and that will make it much more conducive to recording videos inside my kitchen. But yeah, so that is it. My bowl is almost full. Hooray! I have so many grapes left. I still have a 5-gallon bucket too. Goodness. All right, guys. Well, that was the last question I received. So thank you for all of the questions that I got. I thought this was the perfect time to do it, since I'd just be sitting here talking to you anyways. Might as well talk to you while I'm picking grapes. And this will be great because there won't be a lot of editing to do on this video. It should be out super quick. Okay, guys. Well, I can't wait. I think the next video will be on my new camera, so there won't be like this nasty glare. There's a bunch of dust in the lens that I can't get out, but my camera's a mess. So I am very excited to see you guys next time on my new and improved camera system. Thank you for joining me, and I will catch you on the next one.